Well, let's have a look back now at the key events over the last 6 months. Our defence and security analyst, Michael Clarke, is at the screen for us. Michael, just take us through the last 6 months.
Yes, Kimberly, after months of denials from Putin to everybody who visited the Kremlin that there was no invasion planned, on the 24th of February, exactly 6 months ago today, the invasion took place. Invaded from several places at once, from Belarus and from Russia proper, with air attacks all around the country. And that invasion was meant to be all over within 3 days and completed by the 8th of March. On the 28th of February, we saw this big convoy developing out of Belarus down towards Kiev, and we all assumed that this was going to be the encirclement of Kiev, which indeed it was intended to be. Didn't work. The convoy just ran out of momentum. The Ukrainians attacked it, or attacked the logistics. It was one of the great humiliations for the Russian military that they couldn't run a big convoy to do anything. However, they did take Kherson. They didn't conquer Kherson. It was given to them by internal subversion, so the Russians just moved in on that city. It's the biggest city that Russia has occupied in the whole of the country. It's an important city because it controls access into the Crimea and the water supply. Almost immediately, civil disturbances, civil disobedience developed in Kherson, people turning out on the streets, making clear what they thought about the Russians. The Russians didn't really know how to handle this at the time. They were very passive. Since then, of course, it's become a much darker picture. The Russians have become far more repressive, and these demonstrations, public demonstrations, have now turned into a partisan warfare of assassinations and car bombings and so on, which the Russians, of course, say is terrorism. Meanwhile, the Russians had to withdraw from Kiev. The Ukrainians were moving into the suburbs, places like Bucha that had been intensively fought over, and all the war crimes became clear, not just in Bucha, but in Chernihiv and Sumy, further northeast. Those war crimes shocked the world, and all the leaders who've been to Ukraine have commented on what they saw in Bucha. Meanwhile, Mariupol should have fallen in the first days of the conflict. It was so close to the front line, but it didn't. And Mariupol held out for a long time. In April, the Russians said that they were going to concentrate on the Donbass. They took Kharkiv, but then had to give it up. And the Ukrainians were able to liberate Kharkiv, and the Russians are now still a good 25 kilometres away. That offensive hasn't gone much further for the Ukrainians, but they've kept Kharkiv as the second city which is in Ukrainian hands, although it is still subject to missile attacks fairly regularly. But Mariupol, finally, having held out from the end of February right through to almost the end of May, finally fell on the 21st of May. Of course, the Azovstal Steelworks was the final holding place of holding out. And when that fell and Mariupol defenders were taken into captivity, strategically that didn't matter so much, but emotionally it was a big moment. And the Russians put in enormous effort into finally taking Mariupol because, in fact, they needed to move their troops north to get on with this offensive across the Donbass. And so this Donbass offensive has been going on since June. On the 24th of June, they were able to take Severodonetsk, quite an important regional city, and then very quickly, best thing they've done so far militarily, was take Lysychansk. And by crossing the river, they were able then to get hold of Luhansk, one of the two oblasts, the two regions in the Donbass. That gives them about 2/3 of the Donbass, but not the final third. They need all of the Donbass if they can say that they've conquered it, and they need some of the material and the resources of that other part of the Donbass. But their offensive has run out of steam. It's just gone nowhere in the last 2 or 3 weeks because they've been transferring troops down to the southwest, because the Ukrainians around Kherson in the southwest are preparing a big offensive to try to take Kherson back. Both sides now know that the weather will change in the next 2 or 3 months, couple of months, by the end of October, early November. They know that winter is coming, and both of them, for different reasons, have got some pretty big decisions to make as the winter comes on. The Russians to actually make something of their Donbass offensive, the Ukrainians to try to seize back Kherson, which will be a very important psychological blow to them if they're able to do it. So, for both sides, and for different reasons, winter is coming.